Maschwitz is an educator from Argentina. She founded her school in Buenos Aires 40 years ago. She has had entire generations of children coming through her school, growing into adulthood, and now they're out there in the world running their country. These are some of the most important and influential people in Argentina have gone through her program. And even then, she has been doing child-directed learning, play-based style education, self-directed learning, way before it was popular, way before it was well known. She's a remarkable woman, intelligent, well-educated, and incredibly passionate. One of the things that really inspires me out of this conversation with Sally is when she talks about, let's not go back to school. Speaking about the pandemic, let's not go back to school. Let's go back to nature. Let's go back to the streets. Let's go back to the unschooled mind, she says. That's not the kind of thing you hear from people who run schools very often. And I find it really provocative and interesting to be thinking about that. So I really, and the other piece that really is true about her, she also talks, but like so many of the people in this summit have talked about the importance of bringing parents into the classroom and becoming involved in what we're doing and educating the parents as well as the children. Because, when you educate a child, but when you educate a family, you've educated everyone for life. And I think that's something maybe we don't think about too much in the early years. And maybe a lot of parents, right, don't think a whole lot about that either, about how maybe it's our job to become educated too and not just rely on the professionals to do the work. Because this project of raising young children is the central project of every civilization that's ever existed. So I think Elena brings an incredible amount of wealth and wealth of knowledge and experience to the table here. She's seen it all. And her vision of hope and her talk about returning to the unschooled mind is something that I will be thinking about for a long time.
Hey, welcome back to the Play First Summit. And I'm so excited to introduce you to an amazing educator and founder of her own school. And I want to tell you a little bit about her. And Elena, can you say your last name for me? Because I'm afraid I'll mangle it.
It's Maschwitz, German.
Beautiful. Well, I want to tell people who you are. You're an educator, lecturer on a national and international level. You're an educational trainer in Argentina. You founded your school in 1979. You've published books, have articles in newspapers, magazines. You have research. I mean, like, you're incredible. Like, when you look at the body of work that you've done, your research has integrated theories and methods of cognitive psychology, neuroscience, and the knowledge of sciences to develop pedagogical frameworks and practical instruments in the classroom education. And you're really about personalized education. And in these last 5 years, your research has focused on enriched environments for the development of mind. I mean, that's just the tip of the iceberg of what you've accomplished. It's impressive.
I've covered lots of things. It started when I was 16 years old. Yes, because my mother had a school. So I started there. And she didn't want me to be a teacher, because she said that teachers didn't earn good money. So she didn't want me to be a teacher. So I was there helping a teacher, working as a helper. And the teacher used to work with, plasticine.
Yes.
And she gave the plasticine, the same amount of plasticine to each kid. And she started saying, now we're going to make like a snake. Everybody together. Let's make a snake. And she started doing a snake. Now we're going to put the snakes away, and we're going to cross our arms, and we're going to start resting. And she started resting. The kids didn't rest. They didn't want to rest. They started playing under the desks, under the tables. So I went to my mother and I told her, look, Mom, this is boring. I'm bored, and the kids are bored. Can I take 2 or 3 kids outside and play with them? And she told me, you don't know what you're doing. You're not a teacher. And I said, I'm not a teacher, but I'm bored to death. and they are bored to death too. Let me take just 2 or 3 kids. And I started taking 2 or 3 kids, and suddenly I had all the kids with me outside, and the teacher was sleeping inside the classroom. That's the way I started, you know.
Oh my gosh, that is hysterical. But you nailed the moment, right? Like, this is not working. They're bored and she's sleeping.
Yes, right. And there I started when my mother told me you have to start reading and learning things about the kids, about K. So I started on Saturday mornings, I started going to a course and I started learning about Ks. So there I switched to the educational part. I started when I was 16 years old.
That's
And I love it.
amazing.
And I love it. I really love it.
So you founded your school, Godspell, in like 40 years ago?
40 years ago, right.
And so what was education like in Argentina when you first started?
Well, we started a school because we had our own kids. I was married and I had 3 kids at that time. And we had our kids in our schools, and they were like traditional schools, you know. At that time, everything was so traditional, and they still are. They still are. That's a big problem that we have. Schools are very traditional type. We still think that the kids have heads with empty vessels to things to put into the heads, to put into the brains. We still are waiting for the ministry to tell us what the curriculum is about. And we don't believe in emergent curriculums. That's a problem that we used to have 40 years ago, and we still do have them now. Now we are hoping that this virus thing, that this pandemic is going to change something. I have a webinar now next week saying we cannot go back. We cannot. This is an opportunity. This is an opportunity to start thinking again, what's the image of the child? What do we want them? What we want them to do? What we want them to learn? What the image of the child is? It's not a vessel. It's not something to put in curriculum done by the Ministry of Education. We have to start with emergent curriculum. We start hearing their voices, paying attention to their feelings, asking them the marvelous questions, asking them and paying attention to their questions. That is that shift. We have to do it. We have to do it. There are some people from these last 40 years, because I started 40 years ago. Imagine they looked at us as if we were strangers. Suddenly, what are you doing? We had zones in the class, you know. Kids went around the zones instead of having all the kids sitting and looking at the front. But we still have these type of teachers, you know, they're standing at the front of the class, teaching the kids what they should know. So that is something that we are trying to change. Everybody is trying to change. When it's our dream, you know, our dream.
So what is the biggest obstacle you've had to overcome in these last 40 years?
Probably we can say it's culture. It's a mental model. It's a mental model with very difficult to change. We know that the brain changes slowly. We know that. But it's a mental model. And you know, everybody was like, education. Nobody talked about education. Nobody talked about that. So nobody made a question. Nobody asked a question. Why is it that the kids are bored? What are we teaching? What's the image of the kid? Nobody talked about this, only researchers. And we don't have a lot of research in Argentina. My own research, I made research in Italy with Loris Maraguzzi, you know, with Reggio Emilia, and my own research in Harvard with the people in Harvard, and in AACD. I went to the States, I went to Spain. I started following with Victor Garcia Oz with the personalized education. So my own research was outside the country. I couldn't do the research in here. So I brought the ideas from other countries to my country. But now we're starting to look at these things. No, we are starting to look. The problem is that the teachers are afraid of changing. The culture, parents are afraid because it's very difficult to change a mental model. It's very difficult. But we're starting.
Is.
We're starting. Yes,
And,
it is.
and you were, before we started, you were mentioning, that there's this opportunity, and that you saw in March when all of this, lockdown started to happen. How did the teachers, the early childhood teachers, respond to this? What happened in Argentina?
Ours is a very, very big country, and we have very different ways of teaching the kids. We have a rural area, we have the urban area. In the rural area, you still can have schools that have kids from 5-year-old, 6, 10, 15 all together in one classroom that we have. And we have schools that are in the cities, in the cities inside Argentina. And then we have a very big problem here in Buenos Aires, because most of the people are here. And in Buenos Aires, we have a very high society, a middle society, and we have 50% of our kids are poor. 50% of our kids are poor. It's terrible. And they live in villas, what we call villas. So all those kids live in one bed all together with their parents, in one bed. So imagine that is so different from the kids that have their own garden, their own houses, their own families, their own teachers. So we have to, when you ask that question, it's very difficult to answer it. Our problem, or my problem, is to focus on the kids that need us. And the kids that need us are the poor kids. The rest of the kids, they are going to be better because they have their parents, they have their teachers. Teachers started working with Googles or with Google or with technology, and they made contact with the kids. The problem that we have is that you don't see each other, you don't touch each other. The problem that we have with emotions. We are, as a country, we have a culture that we kiss each other, we hug each other. We are all together all the time. Whenever you say hello, you kiss each other. Kiss. Whenever you say, how are you, you hug the children all the time. And that is going to be a very big problem for all the kids in Argentina, and probably for all the kids around the world. That's going to be a very big problem, the social emotional problem. No?
Huge.
Yes, it's going to be a very, very big problem. But the kids of the poor kids in Argentina, they are just in a bedroom. They have no water. They have no food. So and now we are at the top of the peak, because we are at this precise moment at the top of the peak. So nobody's going outside. So kids don't play. They cannot play. They have no a ball. They have no mud. They have no paper. They don't play. And that is our problem. That is what we have to look at.
And clearly, those children don't have internet. They're not going to have teachers reaching out on Zoom and Google. It's like not possible, correct?
Right. They have the iPhones. Mm-hmm. Parents, most of the people have iPhones. So what they do is they look at the iPhones and they look at the TV. They have TVs. Mm-hmm. So they look at the TV. So sometimes teachers talk through TVs, through the TV screen. But imagine that they are too small. Some of them, they want to play. They don't want to look at the TV.
No.
They want to play among themselves. They cannot play with their sisters or their brothers or their friends. They cannot go out of their houses. That's a problem. So that's going to be a very huge problem. That's going to be a huge problem. And the problems that we have is that nobody's paying attention to this. Government is not paying attention to the kids. There are some presidents of New Zealand, I think that there is New Zealand, that the president took to the kids. Nobody's talking about the kids here. Nobody's asking, what about the kids? What's happening with the kids? Nobody's asking that question. So that we as teachers, we have to make this visible. We have to make this visible, that the kids are there and that they need us, and that they need for us to have a look at them, at their hearts, at the way they think, at the way they feel. Because probably they are mourning, you know. Probably they are sad. Some of them are sad. They don't know what is happening. Some of them are 4, 5, 6-year-old. And this is too long. We've been here for 3 months inside.
Right.
3 months. Imagine
Too much.
Too much. I think that we are the country that's been too long, the longest quarantine, because it's too much, and we still have at least 1 or 2 months more because we are at the peak. So we have to pay attention to this. We have to pay attention to their emotions. We have to, I think that we have to teach them to look at a hope and a horizon, to start talking about how do you imagine the way we are going to live. I imagine that teachers have to start talking to their parents. How's going to be the school? They're going to go back to school to play among ourselves.
Yeah.
Look at each other, to see how you're feeling. Are you happy? Are you afraid? We have to start asking the parents, how are they feeling? We have to start asking the mothers, because the mothers are going to be afraid of sending kids back to school. They're going to be afraid. So how are we going to solve them the problems of safety? Because they are going to be afraid about our schools.
And what do you think? How can we reassure parents?
I think that through experience and working with them all together. I think we have to ask the parents to come into school with the kids, with the kids, not to leave them there at the door and we tell them, no, you stay there at the door and we take the kids. No, they have to come in with us and they have to experience with us and they have to start cooking with the mud with us all together, not the teachers and the kids and the parents over there. We have to start cooking all together. We have to start so that they trust us, a feeling of trust. We have to build a new feeling of trust again. We have to build again and again. We have to start again with a new school, a new horizon, a new hope, a new idea of what school is. We have to start again.
And do you feel like there's an opportunity for teachers in Argentina to hear this message inside of this?
Yes, I think this is the opportunity because it is the first time that teachers start hearing what other teachers are doing. It is the first time that teachers are hearing you, for example. I want them to hear you, Sally. I want them, it's an opportunity to be in the global world because it's an opportunity to know that there are teachers in China, New Zealand, and Italy. Everywhere they have the same problems. All together we're going to make a new world.
Oh my gosh,
this is
goosebumps.
an opportunity for the teachers, yes.
Oh, it's huge. It's part of the mission of this summit is that global uniting. Absolutely. Right. I want to move to just touching upon, I really want people to hear your wisdom because you have so much. And I love how you like looking at your school, how much you've embraced the 100 languages of children, the multiple intelligences, and how much this is so much a part of what you do. Can you speak a little bit to that work that you've done?
Well, we started 40 years ago as a school But previous to that, I've been talking in other schools. I've been teaching in other schools. So I knew what I had to change things. So at the very beginning, we started changing the idea that the kid was not an empty vessel and that the kid was the most important thing of our school. That was our aim. The kid was the aim, the minds, you know. And I didn't know Howard Garden because at that time, neuroscience was not there for everybody. So we didn't know what happened in their brains, in their minds. We knew what happened when they looked at us and they were bored, as I told you. They didn't like the teacher teaching them, you know. So when I went to the States and I saw a teacher having these different zones in the classroom. So I started saying, why only in kindergarten? Because we used to have that in kindergarten, but not in the primary school. So I started changing the primary school, first form, second form. All of the kids need zones. All of the kids have their own way, their personalized education. So I started following Victor Garciaos, who was a Spanish teacher, wonderful. He didn't know about neuroscience, but he knew that kids had lots of potentials. He always kept saying that. And he kept saying that he knew that the kids should be autonomous, you know, doing their own pathway, their own way of, the kids know what they want to learn. And what we have to do is not teach them what we think that they have to know. We have to teach them to answer their own questions. We have to pay attention to the questions, the marvelous questions, but not only the who, what, or where questions, not the WH questions. They have the textbooks for that. We have to ask them different questions. How is it? What do you think? Is this possible? Do you think this is possible? What do you think ideas are? You know, do you think, what do you think? Where do you think ideas are? They're going around. Where are they? In your brains, around, in the garden? Where are they? What do you think about butterflies? Do you like butterflies? What do you think about stars? Let's go out and let's look at the stars. You know what? I can tell you something that happened to me some years ago. I went to a kindergarten and I saw that the kids were playing in a very small little bit of place, all tied up together. And the windows of the classes are up there. They're closed like cells because the teacher, and they have lights on. And I told her, why don't you have a big open window? Oh no, because of the thieves. And I told her, look, and why is it that, why don't we go outside and have a look at the trees? And she told me, we have no trees here in the villas. And it was true.
Wow.
Kids never saw a tree. Sally, I'm talking to you about a tree. Kids never saw a plant and a tree. So I told her, look, next time I'm going to bring a plant. A plant. And that is something that we don't see. We are teaching them how to read or how to write or how to play, and we are not showing them a plant. They cannot feel a plant. So that is one of the things that I still keep on doing in my school, you know. Every summer, every winter, every vacation, doing research, and let's start talking again about the kids. I was just talking with my son here. He's now in my school because I left the school to my children, I have 7 children of my own. 4 of them are in the school. So, yeah, 4 of them are in the school. Yes, that's
amazing.
Wonderful. Yes,
it's amazing.
Yeah. And all my 18 grandchildren are there in school, in my school. I have 18 grandchildren. I love them. And I was talking to him. I was telling him, look, we cannot go back to what we used to do in last year. We cannot. The very first thing that I imagine that we have to do is open the school and let them play. Let them get together. Let them ask questions. Let them see how they feel. Let them talk to each other. You know, they are not talking to each other. They're not talking to their friends. They're talking only by Zoom. But for example, I'm talking to you, but I don't know what you're feeling now. I can see your face, but I know that you're smiling. I know that you're well, but I don't know if you're afraid.
Right.
That is something that I don't know. So we have to let the kids be in the school, be there, the well-being, no? The spirit of the school has to be an open our hearts, open the windows of our hearts in order to feel well, to feel well. That's the very first thing that we have to do. And that you're asking me about Argentina, that is something that is very difficult for adults to understand. And it's a question I always ask. For example, why is it that we love our kids? Because we all love our children. But why is it that we send them to schools and where they are not loved?
Right.
Why? Suddenly, nobody asks this question. Because they don't like to go to school. They're afraid. Sometimes they are afraid. They're still afraid. You know, because teachers ask for tests. Teachers grade them. Teachers say this is correct, this is incorrect. We still do that. We still do that. Why is it that we do that? Because I think that now, I think that it is because we don't know. We have to study more. We have to do more research. Because, you know, we are not always creative. I create things when I look at you. I create things when I look at another teacher. I go to Harvard and I go to a school in the States, and I go to the school of my grandchildren, and I look at the door and say, wow, what a wonderful idea. Yeah. Wow. I went to Reggio Emilia and I said, what a wonderful idea. Because we are all together in this, creating different things, different ideas. I'm not a genius always. I don't know how to teach the kids how to read or write. I have to do research on this. I have to look for good teachers doing this, you know? So what I try to do is tell the teachers, look, because once I went to doing conferences about the multiple intelligence books. I wrote a book about multiple intelligence. And what happened? I went all around Argentina, South America, doing lectures. But what did I realize? That I didn't know what the teachers thought. I didn't know. I didn't know what is it that they wanted. I kept on saying the multiple intelligences, and you have to have a look at this, and this is wonderful, and this intelligence, and that, and that. Once I was in a place, a very, very poor place called Santa Fe in Argentina, and the teachers looked at me like saying, what are you talking about? And they didn't know how to say, look, we don't understand, what is that about intelligence? They didn't know. So what I said, I kept on talking and lecturing and talking and lecturing, and nothing changed. So once I said, look, I want you to invite me to the kindergartens. And there I went, and when I saw the kids, when I saw the cells with the windows over there with the jail, like jails, when I heard the ring, the bell, a bell and cell, and a bell and a cell, and a bell and a cell, when I saw that the kids were there sitting down doing nothing, just playing with, and I asked them, why is it that you have the dolls over there on a shelf? I know, because if not, if they touch them, they're going to break them. And they have to play with the dolls. Why is it that you have the books in the cupboard? Bring them down, put them there so that they can experience with a book. They love books. Well, but perhaps they're going to break them. It doesn't matter. You teach them. Teach them how to read, how to enjoy the books, to put them in the shelf in the cupboard. And they were sitting down, and the books were in the cupboard, and the dolls were up there on the shelves. That is something that you have to do if you go over there. That's why I always say we have to go back, and teachers and ministry and everybody has to go into the class with the teacher, into the class. So that's why parents have to go into the school. Let's come into the school, come in. And teachers have to go out of the class, to teach with the caves, with the trees, with the leaves, out of the class, with the mud.
And what I'm hearing so strongly in what you're saying, that's just moving me deeply, is we really have to reassess what is education for. You know, what education puts the dolls on the shelf and the books behind the doors? What are we teaching children by removing what they need in fear of breakage? You know, what is that for? Versus, like you said, getting outside, having them in the mud, having them in nature, having them with the books, helping them read. Why do we educate? What, you know, I think we have old models informing today that are no longer valid.
I think that on the one hand, we don't know what to do. We are afraid. We don't know what to do. We're afraid, so we stay there, you know, in the comfort zone.
Yeah.
And then we keep on doing the same thing that they've done with us, because it's the only model that we know. That's on the one side. There is another thing that it's, you know, it's a problem of power. Sometimes, you know, this is not something nice to talk about, but there is a problem of power, you know, because we are like, we have them there and we are afraid. Sometimes we are afraid of kids. We are afraid of hearing their questions because we have no answers, because we don't know that we don't need to have answers.
Right. It's best not to.
Right. We don't need to have answers.
Right.
Look for the answers.
Exactly.
I haven't got the faintest idea of why is it that that men go to the moon. I don't know why. I don't know what's there on the moon. I haven't got the faintest idea.
Right.
Tell the kids, I haven't got the faintest idea. Let's do it all together.
What do you think? Right.
Yes. You know, it has to do with the self-esteem.
Yeah.
Teachers have to have a good self-esteem in order to not to be afraid of kids.
When I think for me in my play-based journey, I hit a point, you know, early on, it was probably like 2003, something like that, where I struggled of what are the right questions to ask children. And it was such an aha moment when I realized it's not my job to ask the questions. It's my job to listen.
Right.
You know, it's like, what questions do they have? I think this is like you have brought that forward several times, and I think that is gold. Listen to what they're asking. What are they wondering? What, you know, we don't have to have the answers. It's not the point, you know. It's brilliant. And it's so much more. I think that's what Reggio Emilia did for me, is when, you know, I don't remember the exact exhibit that I was looking at, but it was some little girl's response to what a star was. And I just remember being so moved that her theory of what a star was honored and no one had corrected it.
Right. That's the clue. And you know what we did in our school? The Reggio Emilia was wonderfully worked in our kindergarten. But when you go to first form, everything changes, you know, because you have to start learning. You start learning.
With a capital L.
Yeah, it's not a question of just keeping on playing forever or being happy. No. You have to start learning. So what we did was to keep on with the Reggio Emilia questions of the kids up to the high school. The other day I was talking to one of my teachers, a philosophy teacher in our school, and she kept on saying, what the same thing that you are saying now. What questions do I ask? I don't know what questions to ask. And I told her, don't ask questions. Ask them to ask the questions. For example, why don't you ask them, you tell them, let's talk about the leaders of the world. Let's talk about the leaders, the way that the different leaders looked at this pandemic. How did the American leaders did, what the Argentine leader did, what the women did, what Merkel did, what the New Zealand did, because some leaders talk to the kids and ask the kids to ask questions to those leaders.
Mm.
So what we think is that as regional media is our philosophy, that same philosophy has to be for the primary kids and for the intermediate and senior and junior high schools, for everybody.
For everyone.
And for university kids, because university kids have questions. And for the parents, because parents have questions. And for the teachers, because the teachers have questions. Don't keep on answering. When I went to the teachers, I didn't tell them, I didn't want to go back and start talking about multiple intelligence. I want them to ask questions. What's this like? What are you doing? No? I want them to ask questions.
And that takes observation, right? Like to have questions as a teacher means you're listening, you're observing, and letting it imprint you first. Take it in, and then the questions come. You know, they're not contrived. We don't pull them out of nothing. They're out of our experience and what we're seeing and feeling.
What I loved about visual media is a provocation. You have to provoke them to ask questions. Because if you start with your lesson, knowing everything, you're not provoking. You're just telling them, you have to know what I say, you have to know what the book says, you have to know the story that we say, that it's the correct story. But if you provoke them with different things, teachers in our high school, they didn't know what provocation was. So once we did with our principals of the school and with the teachers of the school, we did a Second World War, and we provoked the teachers with different objects, with light tables in the senior school, I'm talking, with light tables. And I asked an old man that had lived during war, what was it that he was astonished about war, about the Second World War? He was a German. And he said, look, what we used to do is put meat in our stockings, and we went from house to house with that meat, giving a little bit of meat to every house. So as a provocation, I bought meat, I put them in a stocking, and I put the stocking with the meat over on a light table. And teachers came and said, what's this? I said, smell it. What do you think? What's that? And you know, with that provocation, we started talking about the Second World War too.
Wow. Goosebumps. That's incredible.
That's a good provocation. We have to provoke all the time. All the time.
I love that so much. And I noticed, you know, again, I went to your website to see pictures of your school, and I love like your outdoor space, your water area is phenomenal. It's like you have so many things for children to experiment and to test, even the mud area. There's so much there. You really bring, you know, again, I'm early childhood, so I was like concentrate on those environments. But, you know, the light tables, I love that you're taking some of that provocation into the upper grades.
Yes.
Like,
yes.
Why stop?
Why stop? It's a philosophy. It's a way of looking at the kids. It's a mental model. It's a model that we have in our brains.
So say more about mental models. I was just recently reading on this myself as I was I was co-authoring a book, and we were groveling with Piaget and his thoughts of accommodation and assimilation, mental models, how we construct schemas and knowledge. I would love to have your perspective on mental models, because I think this is an important term.
Yes, I think that we come we are born with our genetic ideas, you know, the things that come from our parents, from our grandparents, and so on. But our context, the place where we live, the importance of that is what builds our mental model. You know, the place that we live, our parents, our families, our countries. If you keep on saying that teachers are horrible, well, we will all think that teachers are horrible. If you keep on saying that we are all sad, we will be a sad country. If we all keep saying that we are poor, we will be a poor country. If you are enthusiastic, we will be an enthusiastic country. So I think that our mental models are constructed in our homes, in our families, in our countries, in our world. So we have to construct new mental models.
Yeah.
We have to look at our mental models and add hope, add love, add awe. You know, that aha, wow, really, add a smile, humor, all those new habits of mind for the 21st century. No, humor is one of the most important ones. Do you know that?
Yeah.
You have to add humor.
Yes.
We have to add, we know that we have to take, you know what we have to do here in Argentina? We have to take risks. We cannot go back to the old model of the school. We have to take a risk and start playing with mud and start playing with kids and start asking about the fear, about how they're feeling. We have to take risk. And whenever you ask a teacher, are you willing to take risk? Most of the teachers will say, no, I'm afraid. Why? Come on, take a risk. Take a risk. Nothing is going to happen. Be creative, innovate, change, try.
It's so important. And I think once you realize what's possible on the other side of change, you know, like you said, the hope, you know, when you see that, yes, it may be difficult. I remember as I became play-based, I wasn't really sure how to do it because I had no mental model. I had no role model. I had no reference point, right? So I was making my own way. And, you know, there was the pressure of, oh, you let the children do that? Do you really think you should? You know, like the criticism from peers,
Yes.
it's scary, right? But I think it goes back to, like you said, what is it we're committed to in this? You know, how is that child feeling? Are we honoring the children in the process? And the old way doesn't take children in feelings or desires or wants into account. In fact, it says it doesn't matter what you think. You're going to sit down and not touch it, you know, or whatever. So I think it's a huge leap, and it is scary, but oh my gosh.
But the reward is wonderful.
The
result is
reward.
wonderful. It's wonderful because as we have a school, we have them all the way up to 17-year-old, and when they're 16 or 17-year-old. So the reward is wonderful to see them the way they are now. Some of them are mothers and they come back with their children, you know. So the result is really wonderful. They are different, you know, they are creative. They are committed to their values. They know what they want for the kids. That's why, yes, you asked me at the beginning, what was a school 40 years ago where we all had a lot of pressure from other schools? What is it that this school is doing? What are they doing? Now everybody's coming to our school to have a look at this. So what is it that you're doing? We want to do it in the same way.
Wow. Wow, wow, wow. That's amazing. And tell me, what is it that you have seen through these 40 years of the children who've gone all the way through your school, the difference it's made in their lives and who they've become?
One of the things that most of our kids say is whenever they go to university, they are the ones that put up their hands. Isn't it interesting? We put up our hands and everybody's looking at them and saying, what are you doing? I'm asking a question. I'm putting up my hand. That's wonderful. Don't you think it's wonderful?
I love it. It gives me goosebumps. Yes. Yes.
Well, they come back with their kids. That's something that's wonderful.
Oh,
They come back with their kids.
amazing.
They're creative. They have values, you know, we honor our values. Respect and love to each other and a well-being for everybody. That's very important. We have lots of old gospelers. We call them old gospelers, ones that have left school. They're not old, but we call them old gospelers.
Another thing I'm curious about, I know you've done a lot of work on inclusion. And can you tell me why inclusion is important in our schools, in your view, the benefits for the community even?
Yeah. Years ago, when we started school, we had only up to fourth form or fifth form. I had this family that the kids were like brilliant, you know, they were the best of the class. They were all A levels, and they knew everything. They were very sportive, they knew a lot of math, history, and so on. But the mother had a daughter, and she was in her home. She didn't come to school, and I asked her, why don't you send her to school? Oh no, because she has a strange disease that is called autism. We didn't know what autism was. Nobody knew what autism was at that time. So I asked her, why don't you bring her to school? Because she said she cannot go out of her bedroom. She's in her bedroom and she doesn't go out of her bedroom. So I said, well, I'll go to your house and I'll see and we'll talk about her. So I went and I saw her and I didn't know one thing about autism. And she didn't either. So we talked to the rest of the mothers and we said, what if we come with 2 or 3 kids to play with her? And that we did. We took 2 or 3 kids to her house and they started playing. And in that way, she started bringing her child. And she was there playing with the kids, doing the sports, taking her Holy Communion, doing the play. She was going around. And there she was for years. And that is what I imagine that every school has to have. Everybody has her own potential. All kids should be in school. All kids should be in school. Poor kids, kids with problems, kids with disease, kids with no disease, sad kids, lovable kids, happy kids, noisy kids, troublesome kids. Those kids that keep on doing, because sometimes teachers say, oh, he keeps on moving. Yes, thanks God. What do you want him to be sitting like that? Thanks God he's moving. But he moves a lot. He doesn't pay attention because he doesn't care about what you're saying. Probably he pays attention to something that he loves. Probably it's different. Find out what is it. What is it that he likes? What is it that he loves? Find out, and you see that he'll pay attention.
Yeah, it's huge. And the thing I've seen in my own teaching career is the years I had children with severe, very marked delays or disabilities or special needs. Those years, my classroom would be the most bonded like there's a special gift in that the whole class is together rooting for that individual's potential.
Right.
Young children, when given the opportunity, want to honor the best in each other. I had a little girl who was in my the 4-year-old classroom, could not sit down, could not manage to sit down. So when we would read stories, I would put a chair out for her, etc. After Christmas, she came to the circle to hear the story and sat down. The whole class cheered. You know,
Right.
they were all in it with her. And I was so moved by their compassion. We underestimate young children's capacity to feel into another. It's awe-inspiring if we give them the opportunity to care and to bond.
Right, right. You know, we had one of these, we had a family in our school, it's another family. We had a family and they were all boys, you know. And these twins were born and they had these problems of, different problems of movement. One of them came into school and the other one couldn't come at the very beginning. But afterwards, the mother went around the different disabled schools and she didn't want him to go to disabled schools. She wanted him to come to our school. So I said, yes, come and bring him. And there he was from kindergarten, first form, the primary school, the intermediate school, and the senior school. He was in the sports. You know, whenever he ran in the sports with his chair, with everybody running all together, you know, that was wonderful. He was a goalkeeper. Now he's a goalkeeper in a special group because he's 18 or 19 now. He's in the university.
Wow.
Yes,
Wow.
yes. That's why you follow them. You follow them all their careers. You know, it's wonderful to have a look at them. It's wonderful. It's something wonderful.
Yeah, I think there's such a benefit for all of us to see that all of us have potential, you know, in the exact way that we are and the way we're not. You know, it's really enlivening to the heart. It is. As we start to wrap up the conversation, I wonder if you can just tell me a little bit how you might welcome, how your school, and I know you're not there, but definitely in conversation with your school, of welcoming back the families. Like how do you see that transition from being in isolation back into the classroom?
Well, we have something, the same thing that we do when we are not in isolation, it's the same thing that's happening now. We can look at what's happening in Europe, we can look at what's happening in other countries. That's something for our benefit. But if you tell me what I was thinking and chatting and talking and doing research, I imagine that the first thing that kids need is to be outside of their houses, to be outside. They need to touch plants and nature. They need to be outside. They're in their houses, in their bedrooms. You know, they need to be outside. So, because everybody's talking about wonderful technology. I love technology, but be careful with the technology because it's not a question of having the Zooms replacing the textbooks. Right. Let's go back to nature. Let's go back to the street. Let's go back. The other day there was this journalist asking me a question. He said, but poor kids cannot go out to the park, for example. What are you going to do? And I told him, look, they cannot go out. They can go to the street and have a look at the street. It's different. Our street now are different. What about the people? Where are they? Where are the mums going around? Where are the people running? Where are they? What happened? So let's have a look at the streets again. Let's have a look at the trees again. Let's go back and not to school. The unschooled mind. Remember Howard Gardner that he told us about the unschooled mind?
Yes.
Let's go back to the unschooled mind, not to the school mind. They don't want to
Yes.
go into the class, you know. Probably they want to go into the park to get together, to start a new story, telling a new story. What's your story from now onwards? What was your story during your your virus time? And what is your story from now onwards? What's the story of
Mhm.
your family? Families together, getting together. What are the stories we're going to build together now? I imagine a different world. What are the stories of the world? What are the stories in China? What are the stories in the US? What are the stories in the city? What are the stories in the villas? That's what we have to do. We have to build stories again outside, not in the classroom, not sitting watching the teacher, not reading
Exactly.
again a textbook. Outside, let's go out to the street. Let's go out, let's play. Let's play and play and play again and again. And that will
Oh,
be a new world.
that will be a new. I love it. Oh my gosh. Yes, and yes, and yes.
That will be a new world. We start playing among ourselves.
Yeah.
What do
And
you
you know,
think?
we need it too. Adults need to play again
Yes, we need it
as
too.
much. We need it too.
I need to touch my grandchildren. I haven't seen them. I need to touch them, you know, to hug them, to kiss them, to
Yeah.
play with them.
It is something. My own grandchildren, I miss them terribly. You know, just knowing I can't see them, I can't go there. It's terrible.
It's,
Yeah.
yeah.
But I love that this whole thing of what are stories. You know, the children have stories. We have stories. We're building new stories.
You know what I did? Because I couldn't see my grandchildren. So I said, look, how do we get together? Well, we got together as a family with Zoom and so on. And I started telling them stories about me when I was young, when I was their age, when I had problems with the school because I was terrible in the school. I was a terrible pupil. And I started talking with my grandchildren once a week in Zoom and telling them my stories. And I told my friends to do the same thing as a good idea. So we all started telling our grandchildren stories about ourselves when we were their age, when we were young, when we were in kindergarten, when we were in school, when we had these problems of the political problems, when we had and they love it. They love it. We're all together. I'm not with my 18, some of them are very young, but most of them, they are there, at least 12 or 15. And we are there every Tuesday night and we keep on telling stories among ourselves. Don't you like
I
it?
love that. Oh, I think that's
Yeah,
brilliant. Oh, I
it's a
mean,
good,
it's so, and they'll never forget that. I remember my grandmother telling me stories about when she was a little girl and cooking beside her mother and her grandmother and all the
right,
things that they
right,
did. Yeah,
right.
it's
Because
so.
now everybody's cooking. And for example, I don't know how to cook. My grandmother used to cook. So the other day I was telling them, I'm going to tell them the story of my grandmother cooking cookies for me, pancakes. She used to make pancakes. So I'm going to tell them the way my grandmother did pancakes. I don't know how to make pancakes, but my grandmother did pancakes. So that's the next story for next week.
I love it. Well, this has been such an amazing conversation, and I really am so moved by your commitment to children. You know, being in a country where you were, you know, a lone voice for so long and 40 years strong. That's huge.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
that's passion.
That's passion. Once I
That's
heard in ASCD, a woman, a teacher, she talked about passion. I said, that's passion. That's what I like. Passion, I love,
passion.
yeah.
Yeah, that's who you are. You're such an example of that resilient passion, and that now people are asking about your school. That if we stand strong in our commitments, change will come.
Yes, change will come. Yes.
It may
Yes.
not be on the timeline we want, but change will come if we stand strong. And I just, feel so inspired by you and your passion.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing that passion.
Thank you so much with you to be with you. Because when I went to the States once to visit one of my daughters that she used to live there, she had these 3 little boys, and we kept on talking about schools and schools and schools. And I said, where does she live? Where do you think that Sally lives? Where does she? Why don't we go and meet her? And we kept on talking about this, but we didn't meet you. So
We're
now
going to do it. I want to meet you and give you a hug,
Next time you come to Buenos Aires.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, you can come to Buenos Aires. I love that.
I would love that too. And to see your school. Like I said, it's just, I love stories of resilient commitment and passion, that won't back down, that keeps standing strong.
Right.
And it's just hope, your hope.
Because I know that the kids love that the kids are brilliant, that the kids have windows of opportunity, that the kids are wonderful, the kids are wonderful, the kids are a question mark. So we know that. So we have to work for that.
Yes. Well, I am going to put links below here so people can take a peek at your school and your site and, find out more about you and your brilliance in the world. Thank you so much for being you.
No, thank you so much, Sally. This has been wonderful.